So for anybody in multifamily, maybe it's the office needs some cultural diversity training. Maybe it's a matter of communicating across identity barriers, and there needs to be more training in that. The idea of it is find where you're at, find a goal you're trying to reach, and set goals to get there. What does that look like? And when we mess up, how do we get back on track?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. Our special guest today is Monica Frazier. Monica, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
For those of you that don't know Monica, she is the founder of the Melanin Multifamily Group. Monica, I want to start by introducing you to the audience. Please tell us a little bit about your background, what you're currently working on in multifamily, and how did you get into multifamily?
Sure. So I've been in the industry for over 11 years. It started all at a college fair, career fair. I saw a place with awesome freebies. And next thing I knew, I was hired into the multifamily industry as a leasing consultant. So like many others, started on the sales end. And then through many years of different trainings, different positions, different locations, I ended up where I am today. I'm currently the general manager for Midwood Investment and Development. So I oversee multifamily and commercial properties. And like I said, just kind of fell into it like everybody else and fell in love with it, got hooked, and I've been here ever since.
Let's go to your passion. Tell us a little bit about how the whole idea about founding and starting the Melanin Multifamily Group came about.
Yeah, so I was actually attending one of the big national conferences in 2022. That year was in San Diego. And I had left the conference feeling really empowered by the different sessions and classes, but I kind of felt lonely in the sense that I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me, or the few folks that I did meet, they were also the only people who looked like them. And so there was a need for the connectedness that I was seeing that other members of the industry were having at these conferences. And that kind of birthed my passion. What started as a LinkedIn message to a few women just saying, hey, we should just stay in touch and, be there for conversation, whatever you need, turned into overnight. I had like 40 different professionals in this chat looking for this space and, what's the next step and how does it happen? And I said to myself, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it all stemmed again from personal experience and realizing that we could share this experience of feeling the oneness of others in the community as far as the industry goes, and learning and having all these leadership development options that needed to be shared. And so Melanin Multifamily was born.
Now, where is the group today and what are the goals? What are you trying to achieve?
So we are represented in over 20 plus states through our men and women's group. So we are definitely all over the country. I'm based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So of course there's representation here, but we are definitely all over. So our sort of goals and our missions stem with creating safe spaces and really fostering a sense of brotherhood or sisterhood, depending on what you're looking for. We also focus on development and resource opportunities. So like I mentioned before, ways that we can help with leadership within your organization or representing at association levels, things of that nature. And then, of course, the network. Like I said, that feeling of when you show up to certain places or you participate in different volunteer organizations, that you're going to see somebody, hopefully that you know, but at the very least, that looks like you. So those are some of the goals and missions of the group.
How has being part of Melanin in Multifamily impacted your sense of belonging and within the multifamily sector?
Now I feel like every conference is like a family reunion, that I'm going to see somebody that I know, that I feel really comfortable with, or that I'm going to just meet somebody who knows somebody, right? So it definitely changed the sense of belonging for me and not feeling that loneliness that I felt even after attending a conference that I really enjoyed, right? I've seen the impact in other people who come to me and they'll say, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn, or I heard about the group through a friend. Like, I haven't even met any of you guys, but I'm so excited. And those sort of moments are just like the reassurance of like, we're supposed to be doing this, like we've got the right people in place and the impact is being felt. So it's shared both ways for sure.
How do you feel that the group interacts with the rest of the world? That people that don't share, I guess, I won't say don't share the same value, but people that are outside of your group, right? They're not part of your group. How is the interaction work? Has it been?
I think overall it's been very positive. We've, one, by participating in a lot of different places, have created some visibility for ourselves, and people get to know us for who we are rather than maybe what our presence or our look represents. To others, right, we might be a threat, right? We are maybe not the traditional or status quo representation of a leader or someone that could do the job. But trust you me, all of us are very decorated and have the resume to do the work. So I think the other side of it is folks that aren't aware of sort of the things that impact melanated professionals in multifamily might think that it's not necessary or they're not quite sure exactly what we do. And that's okay, because that's why we're here to educate and bring them into the space and understand the value that organizations like us or really any other affinity group have in not only keeping their employees within multifamily, but just happy in who they are and the job that they do. So I would say like most people like us, but I'm sure we have a few folks that are just not quite sure what we're all about.
Someone from the outside looking in right into your group, I had to say, not just for me, but I think the general feeling is that some might feel intimidated, right? They don't know how to start a conversation. What are some things that you have to share with them, that you have to tell them? What type of messages out there for those that are looking and they might not know how to approach a conversation, how to start a conversation with your group or someone in your group?
Yeah, listen, just because you're not Black doesn't mean you can't support or be a part of what we do, right? We do have specific, organization rules. We have an advisory board. So we do already have all of that, but we do want to interact with those who maybe don't look like us, but want to support our cause. So we have an upcoming mixer at NAA this year, right? Where we want people to see us and have these conversations that they might not be comfortable having on screen. But I think it all starts with just simply saying hello, regardless of the group that I represent. I'm still a multifamily professional. I go through the same thing with residents, suppliers. I do the whole nine. So no matter what, I can still relate there. And then it's building the relationships after that. We might not be best friends on the first visit, but maybe after the third or fourth, right? We've built a relationship and we can have honest dialogue that maybe you wouldn't be ready to have or be comfortable yet with others. And so our hope is that we can foster this sense of community, not only within melanated professionals, but outside of it, so they can feel more comfortable, one, being present, being in our presence, like you mentioned, the intimidation factor, but know that it's a safe space for learning. Not everybody comes with the same education level, awareness, background, environment. And so especially myself, I make sure that I'm very aware of like people start from different places in their learning. And some people are up here and some people are still starting. And so as a leader in these spaces, just taking the time to educate and helping people feel more aware so they can ask those questions that maybe are a little bit uncomfortable.
Monica, what has been the general feedback that you've been getting from your peers in the industry in general about initiatives and their impact on the industry so far?
Yeah, so that's kind of my favorite parts of what I do, right? It's kind of like how we do with the residents. We love the feedback we get from residents who have a great experience. Same thing for this group. When I get an email saying, hey, I had the opportunity to speak to somebody I met through the group or get some advice, career advice, development advice, and now I got that promotion or I got a new job or I got that board member seat. Those are the moments that I absolutely love. So when I hear that feedback, I know we're doing something good, right? We got something going here. And those are the moments. Like I always hear some of my board members, they'll go to different places and hear of people who don't serve as, advisory for us and who are speaking highly of us. And it's like, who is that person? How do they know about us? And our legacy and what we're doing is speaking, volumes, and it's growing. So those are the moments where I'm like, these are the contributions that matter when someone feels like there's a home or somewhere safe that they can go to and express themselves. That's the part that I love. So I've been getting a lot of great feedback from the members on just how it impacts their experience, their career long term, and really the feeling of sisterhood or brotherhood in these spaces where a lot of times it's us and the computer, right? And we're just chugging along day after day. So those are the moments that I relish in.
Monica, how do you measure the success of Melanin and Multifamily's initiatives and their impact on the industry so far?
Well, transparently, since it started just off as a message, my KPIs are out of the roof. I never thought it would grow to this level. But I think what I look at when I measure, how do we know what we're doing is impactful and influential? It starts in two ways. One, like I mentioned, with the actual people saying, hey, I saw this somewhere, or I met a person who represented your group, and now I want to get involved. But it's also the folks who don't look like us saying, hey, I heard about your group. that I love because it means that it's speaking outside of not only our membership, but those looking outside and seeing us and saying, we're making noise in a good way, right? We're representing in a good way. And we want you to engage with us in a way that says, hey, Black professionals are just as equipped. They can learn, they can, perform, they can outshine, they can do all the things. Let us show you just how magical, right, folks can be, and come see us and embrace our differences, and we'll do the same. So yeah, it's been a journey, but I think that's how most people are, receiving us and us receiving them.
I was wondering if you have a certain instance, an example of how your group has made a tangible difference for a member of yours or within the industry in general, if you have a story for us.
Ooh, I won't say any names, but I'll mention a few folks. One of my favorite stories has to do with the president of the Atlanta Apartment Association. During her acceptance speech, she was the first Black woman, so we're excited about that, to hold that role. During her acceptance speech, she credited Melanin Multifamily just for being, again, another safe space to help elevate and provide opportunities for leadership for people like herself and those to follow, right? So many to follow. And so those moments where not just younger leadership or those who've just entered the scene, but those who have been doing the work silently and thanklessly, right? Being able to say, hey, this space is just as valuable to maybe someone new in the industry, to me of 20, 30, 40 plus years, right? So those impacts, like that means a lot to me. I also have another story. I had a woman who had started at a job and it wasn't going so well. She was a little nervous and there were little tensions around DE&I things, right? And so she confided in a few of us in the group, asked for advice, and walked her through the process of trying to remedy it at her current organization. And once that was exhausted, unfortunately, helped her find an opportunity where not only was she making more money, but she was in a better space DEI-wise and is already flourishing and doing really well. So, and that's our goal. We're not trying to do anything but keep folks engaged in multifamily. And so those are just a few of the success stories, I'll say, or tangible things where people have achieved or actually, accomplished something or got a new role that I'd love to hear about.
You mentioned Melissa without actually saying Melissa's name. And she's been a guest on our live podcast. It's been an honor, and I was very excited. So she and I go way back since she was a community manager with Greystar.
Oh, wow.
This is about 16, 17 years ago, right? And our career paths haven't crossed since. Mm-hmm. Of course, we knew each other. We knew of each other. We always ran into each other at events. So it was an amazing thing. Like shortly after, she was named as the chair of the Apartment Association, for her to be on a podcast and share, some amazing things. And, her story has been very inspiring. So, Monica, you mentioned a couple of times DEI. I'd like to stay on a topic here and just kind of talk a little bit about DEI. What's your vision? What's your definition of DEI? How does that supposed to play within a professional environment, within a business environment?
Yeah.
What is the role that it should play?
DE&I, for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion, are pillars of leadership. So I don't think that you can talk about leadership without having the conversation of DE&I, because leadership is for everyone, and as far as being the leader and leading others. So as far as the definition goes, it's not only having the representation, but making sure that the voices represented hold equal weight. So we're talking equity. And then, of course, that when it comes to decision making, that all the voices that are represented are diverse and included in the decision making. So there's a lot of different layers that come with that when it comes to organizations. I think you asked the second part, which is what can organizations do, or like what the vision is for organizations with DE&I. And I think when we think about what a perfect company looks like, one of the things that we try to idealize is like the community atmosphere, how the employees work together, how they engage together, how they feel about the company. And all of that can be answered through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So when companies are trying to figure out how do we keep people longer, how do we keep people happy, how do we make people feel like they're a part of our culture, then DE&I can be the answer to that. So when it hits the bottom line and the numbers all come in, we see that companies who incorporate pillars of DE&I have better returns. I think over 13%. I want to say the last surveys that had went out say over 13% more revenue. So when you look at the bottom line in respect to, is this really worth it? Is it going to make people feel or do or be motivated? The answer is absolutely yes. Creating inclusive workplaces for everybody makes it better for the greater sum, including the bottom line.
In terms of metrics, right? You mentioned that there's about a 13% difference out there for companies that are embracing. But are there any KPIs out there? When it comes to DEI, are there any KPIs? How do you measure the impact of it? How do you measure how it's been implemented? Right?
Yeah. So it's not like operating statements, right? It's not just, is it a good variance or a bad variance, right? It's not measured that way. The greatest thing about qualitative data is there has to be a start point and an end point. And so when companies try to approach DE&I, they just try to do initiatives. I tell them to slow down because you don't even know where you're at to determine where you're going. And so the first step in creating the KPI is, of course, temperature checking where you are today. That could be in the form of an anonymous survey asking about how employees feel about DE&I efforts. Do they feel included, represented, all those different components, and setting a baseline for this is where our company is today in respect to these values, we'll call them, right? And then it's setting goals within said value. If the goal is to make people feel they're more included, or we have folks maybe with invisible disabilities, so we want to modify some of our communications to make it more accessible, then those become the goals set from the temperature check, right? We're here today, we want to be here. Now the KPI is the SMART goal. How do we get there? And what's the timeline to get there? And I always recommend companies look at others who are doing DE&I well, right? What they emulate is, the success story, and see what strategies they've done. The reality of it is you're going to mess up. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to do the wrong thing. There's going to be an impact to your ability to know if it's 100% going to be correct. But at the end of the day, it's the effort and the transparency that organizations have with their employees that really changes the game on how people feel about it. If I know that folks, my company is taking feedback from folks and really trying to make a change, even if they mess up a little bit, I'm going to be more open to the idea that they're trying to make change and they're being transparent in their goals than if they just start making decisions and all of a sudden we're celebrating a holiday we've never celebrated before, right? So it's like we want to have some strategy and transparency in these efforts, and that's how we can create measurable key performance indicators in DE&I.
Can you think of some specific companies that have implemented these policies well and that actually show those results, the improvement that you mentioned prior?
Yeah, no, I'm no expert, so I won't quote their direct numbers, but I can tell you a few organizations that have done things well overall versus who have had maybe good campaigns or good streaks. We've seen our big companies like Google and whatnot create very inclusive environments where they're inclusive of those who are parents. Maybe there's daycare services, laundry services, right? There's different things within the organization's physical structure that help create inclusive environments. We see folks like Comcast who are doing things in the community level, contributing grants and scholarships and things like that at the business level to help with different initiatives, right? Every different organization can put focus on creating equity in different realms. So, and I'll even go to like, let's say even our healthcare providers here in Pittsburgh, we have UPMC, for example, network, and they do different DE&I initiatives to help their doctors become more inclusive in the way that they treat their patients. So all to say is there are big companies already doing it their way, but they have, like we said before, measured where they are today and say, we want to be here. And this is how we're going to get there. So for anybody in multifamily, maybe it's the office needs some cultural diversity training. Maybe it's a matter of communicating across identity barriers, and there needs to be more training in that. The idea of it is find where you're at, find a goal you're trying to reach, and set goals to get there. What does that look like? And when we mess up, how do we get back on track? Those are a few companies that are doing it well.
Monica, now, how has your involvement in National Apartment Association and other industry organizations influenced your career and approach to DE&I?
Wow. As far as it affecting my career, like changed tenfold. I worked on site and wasn't really involved at the association level, that's state and national, until about 5 or 6 years ago. And my trajectory turned. I got involved in the national leadership programs. That started me getting more involved with how to be a committee member for the NAA. So that grew. And that in turn made me more involved at my state level. I became an advisory committee member to now I've been sitting on the board with them for 5 years for the Pittsburgh side of things. Again, staying involved in education, membership, supplier growth. Like it has changed my life, honestly, to be more involved. And so how that relates to how it changes my DEI lens is that to be transparent, a lot of people think lived experience is DE&I. They say, oh, you're Black, so you know everything about DE&I. That's not the case, right? I had to learn a lot about Native peoples. I had to learn a lot about people with invisible disabilities, or the idea of what a disability is, and understand that. I had a lot to learn about LGBTQ. So I say, like, we're forever learners. And just because you may be marginalized or experience something yourself doesn't mean you don't have plenty to learn. And so that's what the industry taught me. The more I met different people from different parts of the country, to people who were maybe like firstborn American and their parents weren't from here and they're navigating this world the first time, I met them by going through these different industry events and industry sort of led things. So I'm grateful for that exposure, because it made me realize that DE&I requires everybody, but it also includes everybody to be successful.
I know that there's a formalize that's coming up in 3 weeks for us. And we did this recording just in time to be ahead of the event. I know that the affinity groups are going to have, their designated space over there on a trade show floor. I'd like for you to speak on the affinity groups in general, and what are some things that people should be looking for when they're searching for that particular area where your groups are being, where they have their booths out there.
So I believe, and Josh told me, we're outside Hall D. You have to look at the app to be sure, but we will be by the trade show floor. So you will see us at the exhibition hall areas. And so an affinity group, just to kind of break it down, an affinity is like an interest or an identity or a like. So if we both like something, Adrian, we could start a group about it. But the idea is that these affinity groups come from folks who maybe have a shared interest or shared identity and want to create community within those spaces. That could be like Melanin Multifamily. That could be like the upcoming affinity group we have coming, Once a Warrior. So that will represent veterans. We have Latinas in property management. We have the Q space representing LGBTQIA. So we have so many different groups that are here, and hopefully more that will come out of the idea that people who are like-minded can celebrate together. We might end up having like the bikers of the apartment associations. It's everybody who likes to bike and ride their bikes during conferences, right? Who knows what could come from folks being allowed to come together in a shared space and have the same profession, have that same identity, but also like other things and care about other things. We see that across the board, right? Every state association has their cares or gives or their community service component, and people contribute there. So it's the same concept as we all like something, we all care about something and have a passion for it. We come together and we build community based off of it. And so our hope is that when people see us at the pavilion, see the different groups, one, that you're either encouraged to join, support, or start your own, so that more people in the industry can feel a sense of community when they're out and about.
Monica, what advice would you give to a young professional entering the multifamily sector today, or considering that, especially those coming from underrepresented backgrounds?
Just like Nike said, do it. Do everything. Do all the things. No, I'm just kidding. I really think it has to do with being engaged. One of the most pivotal, advice that a professor gave me was leaders lead from the front. And so oftentimes when we are identifying as underrepresented or feeling maybe a sense of unfairness, we tend to shy away from an opportunity to make change. And I think for any young person or any person new to the industry, this is an industry where you can make change. You can be influential, you can be impactful, and it starts with being your most authentic self. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking about multifamily to jump head first. Listen, it's not for everybody, but anybody who's been in it longer than like 2 to 5 years is hooked. We can't leave. We can't ever leave this place. So all to say is I think it's one of those things you fall in love with. If you love helping people, if you love connecting with people. I mean, I still love the impact of residents coming in, finding their new home and starting their lives. Like, that never gets old to me. So I always encourage folks, if that's something you're willing to ride out and be impactful, then multifamily, it's the place for you. It's hard work, but it pays well to the soul.
If you are to think multifamily overall and your experience of 11 years, would you say that our industry is, in general, generally speaking, right, an industry that just about embraces everyone? Would that be a fair statement?
I think that now we are seeing more spaces in multifamily where everyone is being embraced. But I can speak to, even just in my 11 years, there's times and places where we still aren't, or we're maybe looked at as, how'd you get here, or who let you in, or what changed. And I think that will take time. I mean, historically, real estate in America has always been for white men, and that's been structurally built through our laws. And those laws have changed, and the impact of education has changed the landscape of that. And as that continues to grow, we'll see leadership, management, and one day owners and clients and assets. All these will reflect the greater spread of our country. But until then, I think that there's always going to be a little push to change. But overall, I think slowly but surely each year, the multifamily scene grows more inclusive of a community. And I see that every day. I just scroll on LinkedIn and I can see it. So it makes me feel better. Even 5 years ago, it wasn't feeling like that.
I love to hear about different experiences, right? As an immigrant, obviously, I'm a minority as well. And I had my own experience. I think people get inspired by stories of how we overcame. I'd like for you to share maybe, some stories of yours or others that you know of how they overcame certain difficult situations that weren't, pleasant for them. But they found those resources to overcome obstacles and win. Because at the end of the day, I think this is what inspires people and sends the message. If that person was able to make it that far, I could do that too.
Yeah. I think about myself as a young girl. I'm a North City kid from St. Louis. I wasn't supposed to be here. I was supposed to go through a failed public school system, have a few children before 25, and that was supposed to be my life, right? That's the stereotype of what someone from my neighborhood was supposed to be. I've had my power cut off. I've lost my childhood things from moving so many times, been there, done that. So I think the whole thing, like you said, about people hearing these stories of resilience and adversity is that it's like a one and done, but like the fight and the plight continues, right? And so I think the beauty of hearing these stories, I went to college, and there were times where, the N-word was used towards student to student, right? And that's in the 2009, 2010. That's not something that's that far away. I've been in work situations where people have walked into my office, Adrian, and asked for the manager, like I'm not sitting in the biggest office in the building, right? Or try to, make slights or microaggressions towards me about me not being qualified to do this job. Or I had one lady say that I couldn't speak well or write well, but I have a degree. I'm credentialed to be able to do these things. So it sounds so crazy to me, right? So I've had these things happen from residents, clients, you name it. And I think, to your point, the adversity of it is I'm bigger than their mistake. Right? I'm more of a person than this one instance. And at the end of the day, most time the comments made towards me, people don't actually know me. They're just making assumptions. So, and I'm not saying that that's an easy plight. It's stressful. You can come to work feeling like you're on edge or on eggshells, like they say, because you're stressed out about the environment or the things that were said to you, or when people try to touch my hair. Like these things are small things that stress me out. But I had to learn, like you said, the strategy of adversity and being stronger than the situation, leaning on the network and support, and knowing when it's time to step back. I'm somebody who has stepped down from a position before. That was very humbling for me. And instead of thinking that was the end of my career in multifamily, it changed the trajectory, and I'm in a better place than I ever thought I would be. And so I think, to your point, is we share these stories not to say, hey, the fight's over, we did all the work, woohoo, we're better now, but to remind us that it continues. The marathon continues. We're still doing the work, and we're still making space for others whose stories haven't turned out like yours and I's, right? And so that's kind of the work that propels me.
Let's look into the future. What are your future goals and aspirations for your career?
Well, I keep playing the lottery, so I'm hoping I win. No, I'm just kidding. For my future career, I do want to continue to stay in multifamily. I hope to one day earn the status of a VP and go over some construction projects and really get to see some things out from the multifamily and commercial side. So that's what I see. As far as the growth of Melanin and multifamily, I want to be able to say that I have an executive board that I just reside on because I founded it, right? I do want people to get more involved and it take a life of its own. And I want us to begin to do community service and help folks get their credentials and start to do more tangible things that have to do with a lot with equity and money and accessibility. So I do see a lot of growth for both myself and the group in the next 5, hopefully 10, 20, 25 years, but slow and steady wins the race.
I was wondering if you could recall and share a personal experience of yours where you felt uncomfortable discussing a certain topic, whether that was a diversity equity and inclusion or whatever other topic in a workplace? What contributed to the discomfort, and how did you overcome the situation?
Yeah, so you may or may not remember the sensationalism around George Floyd's murder. And when that happened, it was very polarizing because a lot of us had to return to work as if the rest of the world wasn't, posting it everywhere online. It's all over the news, and we had to act almost indifferent and normal to it. And that was a really hard time for me because it was like putting on a face for work every day, right? Trying to avoid not talking about it or hearing other people talk about it or see it on TV and act like it doesn't bother you. And after that happened, I started to notice myself in spaces where people would bring it up to just dismiss it. Hey, we're not going to talk about that, or, we'd have nothing to do with that. And I started to be bothered by the complacency, the act of saying, well, I'm not involved, and so I'm going to remain indifferent. And that's just where I stand on that. And I started to feel like that wasn't enough, because if it was me or if it was you, Adrian, if someone they knew, would they have felt different? And if this person looks like my father or my brother or my cousin or my uncle, it left me with a sense of discomfort of, do these people actually value me here? It starts to make you question every little thing about every little thing about yourself and where you exist. And so at that moment, I started to realize that I wanted to get more active in the education, right, of what it meant to have unequal workplace practices or policies, or just some of the isms, like I like to call them, that we experience at work. Add on to the fact that there were already a bunch of cliques, and the way that this company worked, we had asset managers and owners who, again, didn't want to get into sticky business, didn't have much to say. And so it made me question, again, them valuing me as an individual. And so that jump-started my DE&I career. I said, I'm going to go out there and teach folks, at least if they know nothing about it, hey, here's what the definitions, and here's how it makes the workplace better, and here's how it makes your people feel seen. Because I think about the stress that I had during that time. If I didn't have it, could I have performed better? Probably. If I didn't have to worry about being the only person or that feeling of loneliness, could I have engaged better or maybe interacted with the customer or the client better? Perhaps, but we'll never know, because that was the environment that was created, right, by that organization, and they said, you have to thrive in that. And so again, that's when I said, you know what, I'm going to make it so other folks don't have to do that. And so the success story in that is I ended up going to the HR department, the training department of that company, and saying, hey, can I teach DE&I to new hires? Like, can I help introduce this topic to, our company? And so after a few deliberations, and to this day, even though I'm not there anymore, they still do DE&I training at their new hires. So to me, that was, again, the moment that made me feel that way, but it turned into an action that seems to be forever lasting.
Monica, in a preparation of our conversation, you have sent me a list of topics that you definitely like to go over, you're passionate about. One of them is, and I like to stay on this one for a little bit, right? Because I have my own angle without actually knowing like what your opinion of it is, but I want to find out, how do you understand the distinction between equity and equality, particularly in a context of different ideological perspectives, such as communism and American capitalism?
I always like to compare equity and equality to two examples. One is the being able to see over a fence. If I'm only 5'8", Adrian, I'm not sure how tall you are, but I'm only 5'8". And so I can only see over the fence so high. Let's say you're 6 foot. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. So you can see over the fence. So equality says, we'll give both Monica and Adrian a 1 foot box so that they both have the same thing to see over the fence. But guess what? You already stood over the fence. You can already see over it. So you don't even need that. I'm the one that needed it so that we could have an equal view. The other example I have for equity versus equality is like a dilemma we see when people like donate food. Have you ever wondered how someone who is maybe unhoused or homeless is going to cook a canned vegetable? Like, it's the idea that equality is everybody has access to food, but equity is, do they have the access to cook the food, to store the food, to do all the things that actually come with the idea of food and eating it? So equality and equity answer two different things. To your point, there's a lot that comes with how Americans view capitalism. And so equality seems to be the driver, right? Everyone's made equal, everything is equal. And that worked in about 1776 when we started this country, right? But now that things have developed, equality is one thing, but equity is the other component that we need to consider. And that goes the other way, right? Think about in the workplace, if people are getting paid the same, but someone's contributing at a very high level. Equality says they all get paid the same, but equity may say, hey, Adrian is going above and beyond. He puts in 20 more extra hours per week. This person, when it comes to equity and their value of their contribution, is giving more, so they need to be paid more. So these two concepts it's a tug of war. Some people think equality is the only way. Some people think equity is the only way. I think there's a happy medium between the two. But to your point, when it comes to American capitalism, a lot of the focus is equality, and that can make it tunnel vision to the idea of promoting fairness and inclusivity in spaces. I don't know if you feel differently with the concept of communism, but I definitely feel like Americans see it as equality, equality, equality.
I'll share that with you, right? I grew up in communism, and communism is a doctrine that promotes equality, but only promotes it, right? It's only propaganda. Everywhere where communism was introduced, I'll put it this way to you, it's been the biggest man-made cancer that humanity has experienced. There were tens of millions of people that were killed by this criminal doctrine. Everywhere where it has been implemented, it has failed. And you're talking about different continents, different hemispheres. So I'm from Romania. Romania, the whole Eastern European bloc, devastating. 30 years later, people are still suffering from a mental tie to communism. They can't get out of that mentality. They're still thinking they're like prisoners to the past. You take North Korea, a country in Asia, terrible. People are starving right there. Venezuela, one of the richest countries in the world. Communists took over, a disaster. Cuba, right? A beautiful island where people could live like happily. They have everything that they need to live. Communists mess things up in such a way they just ruin this beautiful island. They could have been a paradise. So that has been my experience. When it comes to equality, I'll say, should everybody be given an equal chance? Absolutely, from a chance perspective. But when you make it about equality of outcome, no matter what your input is, everybody should expect the same outcome. This kills initiative, and it kills people that have drive, right? If you're working harder than the next person, the person next to you, but that at the end of the day, the outcome is going to be the same because there's a law, there's a rule that enforces that. Where is the incentive for you to work harder anymore? That's kind of my take, and it's not just the take, but again, I grew up in communism up until I was 14 years old, and even after communism was somehow defeated in Romania, it will take generations for people. Hopefully, things will go into that direction of towards more of a free market economy and freedom and capitalism to eradicate those type of ways of thinking. Very damaging. And I don't think that capitalism is the perfect system, but I think out of all the systems that have been implemented, has been the system that proved that pull most people out of poverty. Everywhere that there's free market solutions implemented by any government in the world. Again, like this is regardless of the country or the continent. Actually, I'm hearing about many countries that are embracing free market solutions in Africa, right? Which Africa was far behind every other continent up until not too long ago. I'm hearing now that, the life expectancy is in Africa is the same as the life expectancy in Western Europe was in like 1960s. Yeah, you might think this has been 60 years ago, but 60 years ago is not that big of a gap. The gap is closing due to availability of technology, free market solutions, and everything that's available. All these amazing discoveries that the science has made in the past few decades.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would echo that. I think to your point with the free market is that beauty. I see it in the history of America, right? And I'll just speak because similar to your experience, my experience is African-American history and that background. And so, yeah, there were communities that because of the free market were more prosperous economically than some of the white counterpart towns, right? And unfortunately, those cities were burned and pillaged, if you will, to an extent. And so to your point, to the other thing you said was the mental impact of this change, right, is going to take more than 60 years. The generations are going to have to cycle through this line of thinking, and then their actions are going to have to speak similarly, right? You can think outside of it and still be, unfortunately, a part of the system or still a part of that environment. And so similarly here is that has taken time since the end of slavery. And that's not even the end of the mental, concerns, right? The impact of Black people in this country has grown in a way that we're starting to see that that generational change, the mental change, is slowly but surely happening. And to your point, having equality of opportunity in this sort of free market gives us the ability, because of technology, to move, to grow, to have a melanin multifamily, right? That can be in this same space as real estate and not be a threat, right? And not be able to flourish. It's exactly that. So yeah, I would resonate it. And it's awesome that you have that perspective because most people don't see it that way.
Monica, this was an amazing conversation, which I truly and thoroughly enjoyed. What are some things that you would like to leave our audience with?
Oh man, one of my favorite things to say, I'll tell people is show up and show out. So whether you're an ally or a part of my group or just someone watching has never met me before, I encourage you to go into every space and show up, be present, and then show out. Spider-Man, right? Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. And I feel that onus in every space that I come into, whether I'm advocating for somebody who can never be in that room and I say their name, or I make sure to thank the invisible people, whatever that looks like for you, that power comes with great responsibility. So I hope that folks walk away feeling a sense of that empowerment and knock the responsibility out the park. Show up and show out, because that's what it takes.
I love the responsibility part. This is a message that's very close to my heart. Telling others that, they're empowered. It's within their power to change things for themselves. It's a beautiful message, and it's the message that I encourage everybody to try to push it out in the world. At the end of the day, I believe that we're a product of our choices, for the most part, not victims of our environments, of what happened outside of us. There's so much that we can't control ourselves, really is. But then there's a lot that we can, right? And that as long as we put all of our time and focus and energy and positivity into making those things better, I think that, the world, it's a better place.
Agreed. And we need more people who feel that sense of empowerment, because it does take each person doing their own passion, fighting for what they love, and encouraging others to do the same for us to really make change. So thank you for having me, because this is the type of stuff that we align on. So I love it.
Your message as a founder of the Melanin Multifamily Group to those that are not part of your group, your outreach message, what would that be?
I would say that in order for us to be successful, for multifamily to be successful, we need allyship in a way, the same way we support in spaces that maybe are not places where people look like us, is the same sort of support that we need to continue the engagement, continue the leadership, continue the development, and continue the representation. So my message to them would be, we're all in this together. So, we'll help you'll help us, and we'll help each other. And that's the goal here.
I love it. Monica Frazier, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. It's been an amazing conversation, and I hope to continue this conversation down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adrian, so much. I appreciate it.
Everybody, this was another great episode and conversation on Multifamily Chronicles. I'm Adrian Danila, your host. Hope to see you back here soon. Have an amazing day.